I divorced my husband because he earned less than me, but 2 weeks later, he won $3 million in the lottery. I sued him to divide the assets, yet since I earned more when we divorced, the judge ordered me to pay him monthly alimony. The echo of the judge's gavel still resonates in my ears, a dry, definitive sound that has turned the logic of the universe upside down. I'm sitting in my car in the courthouse parking lot with my hands trembling on the steering wheel. I can't drive, I can't think clearly. All I hear is that phrase repeated on a loop in my head. With the judge's monotonous and disinterested voice, the court orders the plaintiff to pay monthly alimony to her ex-husband David. Alimony. To David, a man who could literally buy this courthouse and turn it into a garage for his new cars if he wanted to. It's a joke. It has to be a very bad joke. I look at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I'm wearing my best suit, the one I use to close important deals. A suit that screams power, competence, success. The same success that is now being used against me, twisted into a kind of grotesque punishment. I spent years being the locomotive of our marriage, dragging the dead weight of David's lack of ambition. I paid the mortgage, the bills, the vacations he could never have dreamed of. I was the provider, the one who made sure our life had a solid financial foundation. And now a blind, anachronistic legal system is punishing me precisely for that. It is forcing me to continue financing the life of a man who is now obscenely rich. I feel a wave of anger so intense it makes me dizzy. This is not justice, it is bureaucracy at its worst. The judge didn't even blink when my lawyer explained the situation. Mr. David's current financial situation is not relevant to the time of the dissolution of the marriage. He said it as if he were reading a cooking recipe. It's not relevant. It's the only thing that is relevant. The law is supposed to be fair, it is supposed to protect people, but here I'm the only person in this equation who has worked hard, who has planned, who has been responsible, and I'm the one who has to pay. Meanwhile, David, who spent his life daydreaming and buying lottery tickets with the grocery money I gave him, is the victim who needs my financial support. The irony is so crushing that I almost feel like laughing. For years, I begged him to aim higher, to look for a better job, to contribute equally. I told him I couldn't keep carrying everything by myself, and his answer was always the same soft smile, and money isn't everything. Well, look where we are now. Money is everything. It's the weapon that he, or rather the universe, is using to humiliate me. It feels like a deliberate and personal punishment, not from a judge, but from fate itself, for daring to want more, for daring to leave a man who is a drag on my ambitions. I take out my phone and see the news. An article about a tech investor, a woman who just closed a multi-million-dollar funding round. I used to be inspired by these stories. Now I just feel a bitter solidarity. I wonder about her too. If she ever decided to leave a less successful husband, would the system do this to her? Would they force her to hand over a part of her hard-earned empire to someone who is just there existing? It's not fair. There's no other word to describe it. It's a legalized scam, and I'm the only one who seems to see it. To understand why this is so profoundly unfair, you have to understand what our marriage was like. I never saw it in romantic terms of till death do us part. I'm a practical person. I saw our marriage as a partnership, a joint venture. David and I LLC, when we got married, I was the partner with the vision and the sweat equity. He was good. He was the partner with good intentions. He had a heart of gold, yes, but in the business world, a heart of gold doesn't pay the bills. I had a career plan, income goals, and investment strategy. He had dreams, vague and impractical dreams about writing a novel or opening a carpentry workshop to connect with the community. From the beginning, our financial balance sheet was completely unbalanced. I moved up in my company and my income doubled, then tripled. Meanwhile, David stayed in his mid-level office job with no aspirations to advance content, with his modest salary, which barely covered his own personal expenses. I covered the mortgage on our beautiful house, the car, the insurance, the vacations, everything. I saw it as a long-term investment. I was investing in our partnership, assuming that at some point my partner would start to perform, to contribute tangible value. But that never happened. My conversations about the future were about financial planning, asset diversification, maximizing our income potential. His were about the plot of his novel or a new type of wood joint he had seen on the internet. It was like we were speaking two different languages. I spoke the language of success and ambition, and he spoke that of passion and comfortable mediocrity. The resentment began to grow in me slowly, at first like a weed. I felt like the CEO of a company whose co-founder spent his days in the break room talking about his hobbies instead of looking for new clients. Every time I tried to talk to him about this, he would look at me with that beaten dog expression and say, "But we're happy, aren't we?" And that question drove me crazy. Happy? I wasn't happy. I was stressed, overworked, and deeply frustrated. I felt my potential was being limited by his lack of drive. He was an anchor, not a teammate. I wanted to build an empire, and he was happy keeping a small rowboat afloat. Outsiders saw us as an ideal couple, the successful woman and the kind, supportive husband. They didn't see the reality, the frustrated investor and the underperforming asset that refused to appreciate in value. In the end, I realized that my investment was not going to pay off. I had invested years of my life and hundreds of thousands of dollars of my income in a failed enterprise. I couldn't keep doing it. My resentment had become an insurmountable barrier between us. I no longer saw him as my husband, but as my worst financial decision. And in my world, bad financial decisions have to be cut off at the root, no matter how painful it is. I made the decision to divorce in the same way I make all important decisions in my life, with logic, efficiency, and a cost-benefit analysis. The emotional cost of staying in that unbalanced partnership far outweighed any perceived benefit. It was time to dissolve the company. I chose a Sunday afternoon to talk to him after having prepared my key points as if I were going to present a quarterly report to the board of directors. I wanted it to be clean, fast, and leave little room for emotional drama. I sat down with him at the dining room table, the same one I had bought, and I laid out the facts. I told him about our fundamental financial imbalance, our divergent life goals, and the unsustainability of the current business model. I used that terminology on purpose. I wanted him to understand that this was not an emotional outburst, but a logical conclusion, the inevitable result of years of data. He looked at me with wide eyes, completely lost. He didn't understand the numbers, he never did. His reaction was exactly what I expected, confused and purely emotional. "But I love you," he said, as if that were a valid argument in this discussion. I tried to explain patiently that love doesn't pay a mortgage or fund a comfortable retirement. I told him I needed a partner, not a dependent, that he deserved someone who was on his level, who shared his vision. In my mind, I was doing him a favor, freeing him to find someone who would appreciate his dreams instead of seeing them as liabilities on a balance sheet. He refused to accept reality. He cried, he begged, he promised to change, to find a better job, to take it more seriously, but it was too late. The decision was made. To speed up the process and avoid the mess of lawyers, I proposed an amicable divorce. I drafted the papers. I was, in my opinion, incredibly generous. I let him keep the car, which was already paid for by me, and most of the furniture. I saw it as a severance package, a final investment to ensure a clean and quick exit. He just had to sign. In the end, he did. Defeated and heartbroken, he signed the papers. As he did, I told him, "David, this is for the best for both of us. Now you're free to pursue your passions without the pressure of my expectations." I said it sincerely. I believed I was giving him the gift of freedom. I was closing a chapter of my life that had become a burden, and I hoped he would do the same. I felt relieved, as if I had just gotten rid of a stock that was constantly plummeting. I was finally free to build my future without anyone holding me back. The 2 weeks following the signing of the divorce were like a breath of fresh air. I moved into a modern apartment downtown near my office. I felt light, liberated. Every decision was mine. I no longer had to worry if David would like the new painting I bought or if the month's budget would be affected by one of his whims. For the first time in years, I felt that my life and my finances were completely under my control. I was on top of the world, with my career on the rise and free from the only bad investment I had ever made in my life. And then everything changed. I was at the gym one morning watching the news on one of the screens while running on the treadmill, and I saw his face. David's face, smiling from ear to ear, holding a giant cardboard check. At first, my brain didn't process the image. I thought it was an ad, but then I read the headline at the bottom of the screen. "Local resident wins the $3 million lottery jackpot." I almost fell off the treadmill. It was him, my David, the man who spent $5 every week on those stupid tickets, as I called them, and he had won. My first feeling was not joy for him, it was cold shock, followed by a quick and furious calculation. The underperforming asset, the one I had just liquidated for almost nothing, had overnight become a unicorn company. The man I considered a financial drag was now a millionaire, and I had been left out. The divorce had been finalized just a week before. Legally, I was not entitled to anything. The injustice of the situation was cosmic, almost ridiculous. After the initial shock, my strategic mind kicked in. This changed everything. The fundamental imbalance that had caused our breakup no longer existed. In fact, now the scale tipped in his favor. I decided I had to talk to him. Not for the money. Of course, that would be vulgar. I framed it in my mind as a strategic merger offer. Now that we were finally on the same financial level, we could achieve everything I had always wanted. We could be a true power couple. With my business acumen and his newly acquired capital, we could build an empire. I called him and suggested we meet. I went to his old apartment, the one that now seemed small and shabby compared to his new fortune. I laid out my proposal. I told him about our combined potential, how his luck and my intelligence could create something incredible. I told him that my decision to divorce had been a mistake, a reaction to a situation that no longer existed. I was willing to forgive him, to come back and start over now as true equals. His response was calm, cold, and absolutely devastating. "No thank you," he said. "I'm doing just fine like this." He refused to see the logic, the incredible potential. His rejection was not a business decision, it was an act of childish spite, and that brings us back to the present, to the stupefaction and rage I feel sitting in this car. David's refusal to accept my logical and generous merger offer was what forced me to take legal action. If he wasn't going to be reasonable, then the justice system would have to force him to be. My lawsuit was not about greed as his lawyer tried to paint it. It was a legitimate claim to my share of an asset that I had helped cultivate for years. It's a matter of principle. Let's think about this logically, like an investment. During our marriage, who paid most of the bills? I did. Who provided the roof under which he lived? I did. Who covered the day-to-day expenses, freeing up his modest salary for his hobbies and personal expenses? I did, and within those expenses were those weekly purchases of his lottery tickets. Basically, I financed the purchase of the winning ticket. The money he used was in essence a subsidy from me. Therefore, the prize is not just his, it is the return on my long-term investment. For years, I was his safety net, his sponsor. My success allowed him to live a comfortable life without the pressure of having to fight for it. I gave him the stability and the free time to dream. Morally, and it should be legally too. A part of that prize belongs to me. It's my dividend for years of patience and unconditional financial support. But the judge didn't see any of that. He saw a simple timeline. We divorced, and then he won. He completely ignored the years of investment that preceded that moment. And now the final humiliation. Not only am I being denied what is rightfully mine, but I'm being forced to pay him $1 million. The system is punishing me for having been the provider. If the roles had been reversed, if I had been the one staying home dreaming and he the high-income executive, would anyone hesitate to give me a share of his prize? Of course not. Society would expect it, but because I'm a successful woman, I'm expected to just accept this injustice and move on. This goes beyond David. This is about a system that is fundamentally broken, a system that penalizes female ambition and rewards male passivity. I leave the courthouse not only feeling ripped off by my ex-husband, but betrayed by the very justice that is supposed to be blind. My case was not complicated, it was simple. I invested and I deserve my share of the return. Any other conclusion is simply insane. Popular comments from Reddit about the main story. Anonymous user 1. I have to admit it. This is the most eloquent gold digger confession I have ever read. You describe your marriage as a business transaction, your husband as an underperforming asset, and your attempt to get back with him as a merger offer. And now you're outraged because the legal system, which is based on facts you divorced before he won, does not recognize your investment. The audacity is incredible. It's not unfair, it's the direct consequence of treating a human being like a stock. OP's response. It's fascinating how people resort to insults like gold digger. When a woman speaks openly about finances in a relationship, all relationships are on some level a partnership. I was the only one who invested real capital and effort in ours. My language is not audacity, it's clarity. I use business terms because they are precise. He was a bad investment for my future, and the decision to divorce was correct at the time. The situation changed drastically, and my attempt to renegotiate the terms was logical. The system is not being objective. It is ignoring the context of years of my financial support. Anonymous user 2. Morally, a part of that prize belongs to me. No, morally, absolutely nothing belongs to you. You left him because he had no money or ambition. End of story. The fact that he won the lottery afterwards doesn't change the reason you left. In fact, it reinforces it. You left for money and now you want to come back for money. And the judge is forcing you to pay him alimony because according to the law that you yourself invoked by divorcing, the higher-earning spouse supports the lower-earning one. You played a stupid game and won a stupid prize. OP's response. I didn't leave for money, I left for the lack of an equal partner. It was about the imbalance, the lack of effort. On his part, it was a matter of principle. And yes, alimony is the law, but the law is supposed to make common sense. In what universe does it make sense for a person with a net worth of $100,000 to pay alimony to someone with a net worth of $3 million? The law is being applied blindly and without logic, punishing me for my previous success. It's not a stupid prize, it's a perversion of justice. Anonymous user 3. The real problem here is your inability to see your ex-husband as a person. He was an asset, a bad investment, a drag. You never saw him as your partner, David, and now you're surprised that when you suddenly have an interest in merging with him, he rejects you. It's probably the first time in years he has felt valued for himself and not for his income potential. The fact that he is hitting back at you through the legal system you yourself initiated is honestly a kind of poetic justice. OP's response. Of course I saw him as a person I supported, cared for, and financed for years. Does that not count as seeing him? I gave him a comfortable life he couldn't have afforded on his own. What I couldn't keep doing was sacrificing my own future for his lack of initiative, and he is not hitting back at me. He is exploiting an absurd legal loophole out of pure spite. A man with a minimum of decency would have waived that alimony. His decision to accept it only shows the kind of character he has and further validates my original decision to leave him. Update 1. A month has passed since the verdict, and the reality of this bureaucratic nightmare has begun to materialize. The comments here for the most part have been predictably simplistic and cruel. They call me a gold digger. They accuse me of having no heart. It's easy to throw those stones from the anonymity of the internet without understanding what it's like to build a career from scratch, to be the only responsible person in a relationship for years, and then see all your effort turned against you. No one here understands the concept of sweat equity, the value of one's own effort and sacrifice. I invested years of that in David, and now the law says it's worthless. The humiliation arrived by mail last week. An official notification from my bank. The first alimony payment had been automatically deducted from my account. Seeing that transaction on my bank statement was like a physical assault. My money earned through my long hours at the office, my business trips, my stress transferred directly to the bank account of a multimillionaire. I felt like vomiting. It's as if the government is robbing me to give to the rich. Every month a portion of my salary will go to finance the luxurious life of a man who refuses to work. Now, not due to a lack of ambition, but due to a stroke of absurd luck. To make matters worse, I spoke with a mutual friend, Mark, who still sees David from time to time. I wanted to know what he was doing with the money. Had he invested it? Had he hired a financial advisor? The answer almost made me throw my phone out the window. According to Mark, David used a good chunk of the money to buy an old warehouse on the outskirts and is turning it into a community workshop. The same stupid dream he talked about for years. Apparently, he teaches free woodworking to local youth and organizes do-it-yourself workshops on weekends. Mark told it as if it were a noble act, the work of a saint. I could only hear the sound of hundreds of thousands of dollars burning in a bonfire of useless idealism. He's squandering the capital, I screamed at Mark. Instead of investing it, he's giving it away. Mark didn't get it. Of course. My frustration reached a critical point, and I called my lawyer. I demanded that he file an appeal, that he fight this madness. His response was disheartening and frankly pathetic. He explained with a tired tone that an appeal would be costly, that the chances of success were almost nil because the law was clear about the chronology of events. He said he fought as hard as he could. Fought. He barely seemed to present a coherent defense. He didn't know how to argue the concept of long-term investment or the principle of moral fairness. He was an incompetent. I fired him on the spot. If the legal system isn't going to fight for me, I'll have to find someone who will, no matter the cost. I will not let them defeat me so easily. Popular comments from Reddit on the update. 1. Anonymous user 4. Every update makes you look worse. Your ex-husband is using his money to help his community. A dream he had even when he had nothing. And your only reaction is that he's squandering the capital. This proves you never cared about his happiness or his dreams, only his income-generating potential. The fact that he's a good person only enrages you more because it makes your transactional worldview seem even more empty. OP's response. Helping the community is a nice way of saying financial irresponsibility. What legacy will that workshop leave when the money runs out? None. If he invested it wisely, he could create a foundation, generate interest, and help people in perpetuity. But no. He chooses instant gratification and the appearance of sainthood. I'm not enraged that he's a good person, I'm enraged by his lack of vision. It's the same short-term mentality that frustrated me throughout our entire marriage. Anonymous user 5. You fired your lawyer because he told you the truth. The law is not based on subjective moral fairness or your personal concept of marital investment. It's based on facts and timelines. You got divorced. End of shared asset. Your refusal to accept this reality is going to cost you a fortune in new legal fees for another lawyer to tell you the exact same thing. You're throwing good money after bad. OP's response. I fired my lawyer because he was a conformist. A good lawyer doesn't just tell you what the law is, he finds a way to argue your case. Within it, he looks for angles, he fights for his client. He simply gave up. I'm not throwing away money, I'm investing in my own defense against an absurd system. Sometimes you have to fight for a principle even if it's an uphill battle. Surrender is not in my DNA. Anonymous User 6. The alimony payment hurts you so much not because of the money itself, it's probably a fraction of your income, but because it's a symbol of your total loss of control and power over David. For years you had the financial power. Now he has so much money he doesn't even need yours. But the law forces you to give it to him anyway. It's the humiliation you can't stand. He has won at the only game that mattered to you. OP's response. Of course it's the humiliation. It's a humiliation imposed by the state. It's not a game he has won. He did nothing to deserve it other than by a piece of paper. I built my success. He sat around waiting for luck to fall from the sky. The fact that the system rewards his passivity and punishes my effort is the definition of injustice. And yes, I'm going to fight it with everything I have. Final update. The last few months have been a hell of meetings with new lawyers, each one more expensive and more pessimistic than the last. They all told me the same thing in different words. The law is the law, time is time. My case was a textbook example of why it's crucial to finalize all financial matters before a divorce is final. Meanwhile, on the first of every month, the notification of the bank transfer would appear on my phone, a sharp monthly reminder of my powerlessness. I was preparing to make the third payment, ruminating on the injustice, imagining David in his stupid workshop covered in sawdust and sanctimony. That's when the letter arrived, a thick official-looking envelope from a law firm I didn't recognize. My heart sank. I assumed David was suing me for something else, perhaps for slander, after my conversation with Mark. With trembling hands, I opened it, expecting the worst. But it wasn't a lawsuit, it was a legal notice. Yes, but its content was so unexpected I had to read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. The letter, written in cold, impersonal legal language, stated that the firm's client David was formally and unilaterally waiving all present and future alimony payments to which he was entitled under the court order. The document had already been filed with the court, making the decision irrevocable, but that wasn't all. Attached to the letter was a personal check, a check from David's private account made out to my name. The amount was exactly the sum of the first 2 alimony payments I had made to him. I stared at the check, my name written in his familiar, slightly messy handwriting, the amount precise to the last cent. And I didn't feel relief, I didn't feel a surge of victory. I felt the loudest and most humiliating slap in the face of my entire life. This was not an act of peace, it was not a gesture of goodwill, it was a power move. It was him from his new position of incalculable wealth telling me in the clearest way possible, your money is so insignificant to me that I won't even bother to collect it. In fact, I'm giving it back. I don't need it. I don't need you. All this time I had been fighting a war that only existed in my head. My legal battle, my outrage, my sense of injustice. To him it was all background noise, a minor inconvenience that he was now sweeping out of his way with a simple wave of his hand. The alimony, which to me was a symbol of humiliation and theft, was so trivial to him that he was returning it to me as if it were a charitable donation. He stripped me of my only connection to his new life, my last foothold. I was no longer the bitter ex-wife who grudgingly paid him. Now I was just a stranger to whom he had returned money that to him was small change. I'm here in my luxurious apartment holding a check that burns my fingers. My fight is over, but I have lost in the most absolute way possible, not in a courtroom, but on the battlefield of value and relevance. He, with his community workshop and his disdain for capital, has shown me that in his new world, my money, the basis of my entire identity and the yardstick by which I measured his worth, is worth absolutely nothing, and I realize with a bitterness that chokes me that maybe it never was. Popular comments from Reddit on the final update. Anonymous User 7. Wow, your ex-husband checkmated you in the most definitive way. Not with malice, but with kindness. He took the weapon out of your hand, the alimony, and showed you that money, which was your god, is just a tool for him, a tool he uses to be happy and help others. This is the most brutal lesson in humility I have ever seen. The question is, will you learn from it? OP's response. Don't call it kindness. It was a calculated power move. It was condescension in its purest form. It's not a lesson in humility, it's the final insult. He used his money to put me in my place, to show me that he is on a higher plane. There is nothing noble in that. It's the same old power dynamic, only now he holds the better cards. I haven't learned anything except that he who has the gold makes the rules, even the rules of morality. Anonymous User 8. He gave you the money back, he freed you from the obligation, he gave you exactly what you said you wanted, and you still see it as an attack. This proves it was never about the money. It was about your ego. You couldn't stand that he won. And now that he has shown you he's not even playing your game, you're more furious than ever. He moved on. You're still stuck on the day you got divorced. OP's response. Of course I'm furious. Am I supposed to be grateful to him for returning my own money after the public humiliation? He didn't free me, he dismissed me. He made it clear that I'm nothing to him, not even a financial nuisance. And I'm not stuck, I'm just seeing the situation clearly without the veil of cheap sentimentalism that all of you seem to admire. Anonymous User 9. This is the perfect conclusion to your story. Your marriage, your divorce, your lawsuit were all based on monetary value. And in the end, your ex-husband has shown you that your monetary value to him is zero. In fact, it's negative since he had to spend money on lawyers to give it back to you. You broke up the partnership and now he is the majority shareholder of his own life. A life in which you no longer have any stake. End of transaction. OP's response. End of transaction. I guess so. You are right about one thing. This has all been a calculation of profit and loss, and it seems that in the end I have lost more than I ever imagined was at stake. Not just the money, everything else.